You're listening to the Careers BU podcast, a podcast aimed at Bournemouth University students and graduates. Each episode, we talk to employers, alumni and professionals all about their career journey, what employers are looking for, and help you explore the opportunities that are available to you. Hello and welcome to this episode. I'm Amanda Fripp, Careers Consultant at Bournemouth University. In this episode, I'm joined by Detective James Dickety from the Hampshire and IOW Constabulary. Today, we'll be diving into the world of detective work, exploring what the role involves, the different routes into policing, and most importantly, how to craft a standout application. Whether you're considering a career in law enforcement or just curious about what it takes to be a detective, this episode is packed with valuable insights. Hi James, welcome to the podcast. Can you just kind of introduce yourself to me and your role?
Yeah, sure. So my name's James. I'm a current detective constable with Hampshire and IOW Constabulary. And my current role at the moment is, so I am somebody who supports our student officers from when they start. So I work with all our trainee detectives and police staff investigators from before they even start with the organisation all the way through until they're accredited as pro investigators.
Oh, cool. And how long have you been a detective for?
So I've been a detective for around 5 years now. I've been a police officer since 2013, but I made the move to become a detective about 5 years ago now. And I've been in this role for about, I think, 2 years now, just shy.
Oh, brilliant. So is it all to do with the development of new recruits then?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. So it's all about, we know joining policing can be really, really scary, and actually becoming a detective requires a bit more finesse on top of that as well. So it's all about making sure we support our candidates, because there are some great candidates out there that actually just really struggle with a police application. So that's part of my job, to kind of guide people in the right direction. Some people don't know what being a detective is about because they base it all on watching Sherlock Holmes, which is a little bit different from the truth. And then it's also making sure we get people through the portfolio as well.
Cool. Okay. So can you tell me a little about your career journey? I mean, you mentioned you're a police officer. So what's kind of your background like?
So I studied criminology and criminal justice at the University of Portsmouth. And whilst I was studying that, I was actually a volunteer police officer called a special constable. So I did that for 2-3 years. And then luckily, it was just as the credit crunch was about to hit, which was awful timing on my part for graduating. But they offered a specials only intake. So I became a police officer then. Now, if people had asked me when I started my policing career, are you ever going to become a detective? I probably would have laughed in their face and said, no way. I wanted all the kind of blue lights flashing, like all that kind of response stuff, bonnet slides. I still haven't got one of them, all that kind of really cool stuff. But I didn't. The honest answer is, after a while, I kind of got a bit bored of the uniform stuff. I wanted to change it up. So I decided to become a detective. I literally joined our investigations team for a 3-month summer attachment. That was it. And actually, I really enjoyed it, but I did it as a police officer at first. So I looked at all the detectives dealing with what I would probably describe as the cool crimes. And then I'd be like, I'd rather do that. And that's when I made the move. So yeah, it wasn't the kind of straight linear journey. I didn't always go, I want to be a detective, but I'm glad I've made the move, if that makes sense.
Mm. And so what sort of crimes were you working on as a detective?
So we can work on anything that's described as serious and complex. So serious cases of domestic abuse, high-level assaults, such as like GBHs. So we're talking about broken like bones, stabbings, that kind of stuff. Rape, serious sexual offences. And then obviously it wouldn't just be me by myself, but we can also work on investigations such as like murders, manslaughter, those kind of investigations. So it's a really broad investigation range. And that's one of my favourite bits about policing. Even if I wasn't a detective, to be honest with you, there's so many different specialist areas that you can join. So yes, I'm in this role right now, but I've also worked in Amberstone, which is our rape and serious sexual offences team. I've done secondments to major crime to work on murders. I've worked in our COD department, and there's so many things that you can kind of just specialise if you really want to, and that's my favourite bit. So I started in a cohort of 12 officers, and we've all taken completely different career paths. Some have gone for promotion and some are earning far more than me, and that's absolutely fine. But actually, I really enjoy the frontline stuff and kind of specialising in investigating. And that's the absolute attraction to policing for me. And you don't have to change employers, which is always a real good start as well.
Yeah. Wow. I guess you've kind of come across quite harrowing and quite difficult situations. How do you cope with that?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I think I read somewhere, and I might be misquoting this, but the average member of the public will see like 5 or 6 traumatic incidents in their lifetime. But the average police officer will see thousands. To be honest, I think that's probably quite true, regardless of whether I got the exact stats correct. I've been to car crashes where like people have turned up and they've just kind of like gargled blood at me. I've been to like serious crime, like I've been to murder scenes, I've been to all sorts. So there's some not very nice things. The reality is, to a certain extent, it becomes normalised. You kind of see it so often that not everything that probably affect a member of the public would affect you. That said, there's some fantastic support around. Like, so I know I've said I've had a different career path to all the people that I started with. I've got my response. I had my response team that I started out with. Well, some of them I'm still in contact with, and I don't even work alongside them anymore. So you have a great support network. We've got counselling. We've got an employee support line that's available 24/7. There's so much support that people don't realise is there, and you definitely need it, because there'll be some times where you go to something and you go, oh, this wasn't very nice. Or, for example, I've only got an 11-month-old baby, and I remembered an incident that I went to probably 4 or 5 years beforehand, and I was like, that's made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but the support's there. It does put some people off, but actually some of that's the challenge there. We, as an emergency service, regardless of which emergency service it is, we have to deal with stuff that people would typically run away from. It's not very nice, but actually you get a real insight into people's lives, and you get to support victims of crimes when they've probably been through the worst thing that they've ever experienced. And if you can sometimes have that impact where they can go, actually, you were the one thing that made it okay, or you've managed to get the offender locked up behind bars. That's why people join policing. It's not necessarily for the pay. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be doing it for free. But those impacts you can have on people's lives, even the jobs, I can remember some jobs where I've gone, actually, I've not been able to get conviction in that matter, but the victim's been able to turn to me and go, I can sleep well at night for the first time in years.
Yeah.
That's why people join policing. And you don't necessarily have to be a detective to do that, but that's the impact people make on your lives. And I know sometimes the media is not so great at saying, oh, policing's great, but it's the personal connections that you have that are truly impactful.
Mm-hmm. And are there any kind of like myths associated with being a detective or police constable? Is there anything that you kind of feel like what sort of myths are associated with these sorts of roles?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to blame CSI Miami for a lot of this. Like forensics, for example.
Yeah.
It takes us years. It can take us months to get forensics back. Don't get me wrong, we can get forensics back really, really quickly sometimes, but we can also have to wait months. Another one are loads of the cop dramas. We don't always work in pairs. I'm doing this conversation with you one-to-one, but actually I haven't got somebody waiting in the car for me. And the majority of my work is my work to progress, my investigations to progress. And that's not to say you're going to work by yourself and be completely isolated and you've got to sit in a box for your whole career. But there's a sense of ownership behind your investigations. And if I needed help, if I needed to go out and do warrants, there's a whole team behind me. The policing family is huge, that I can just put my hand up and say, I need support with this. But you're not going to be you're going to be by yourself for the majority of it. What's another one? A really common one is being a detective is a promotion. I'm still a detective constable, so I'm still the same rank as my uniformed colleagues. Being a detective just means I've got specialist training and I've been accredited to say I can deal with more serious crimes. That's all it is. So I can't turn up to a scene and kind of say to all my uniformed colleagues, no, you're going to do this. Don't get me wrong, when they go into a bit in serious incidents, they'll sometimes call me and go, James, can we have your advice on this? But the same way, if I had ever turned up to a response incident, I'd be probably calling them up and going, well, how do I deal with this? Because I've not dealt with it in ages. So loads of people think becoming a detective is a promotion. Yes, we get to see some different things and deal with some different crimes, but we're still the same ranks as anyone else as well. A little bit of a difference to the American system, I believe, because I believe they're kind of treated as if it is a promotion, but not in the UK.
Okay, cool. So in terms of the routes to become a detective then, so you're obviously here to talk about the Hampshire route that is developing, but kind of more of an overview of the different types of routes to become a detective before we kind of focus down on that particular one. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah. So there are so many different routes at the moment. Actually, probably over the last couple of years, there's been an explosion of routes to become a detective. So the traditional route, which is the route I became, so I joined as a police officer, as I said earlier, no intention of becoming a detective. And over time, I moved over to the dark side, as it were. I kind of got exposed to that stuff and actually really enjoyed it. So you got that route. And anyone in their policing career can go, I want to become a detective now. That's one route available to you. There's now a multitude of fast track routes. So there's a really popular one, the Police Now scheme. Hampshire don't do that; they haven't signed up to that scheme, but it's definitely an option for some forces.
I was reading for that one. I was reading there's about 30 forces
Yes,
that come under the Police Now scheme. So those authorities use that as their kind of graduate or their leader, like detective scheme. Is that right?
yeah, so Police Now run two schemes. One's like a kind of graduate leadership scheme where people go into the neighbourhoods programs, and there's another one where they do their detective ones. Now, each year forces get asked, "Do you want to sign up?" And every year it changes, but it is a really popular one for graduates, so that's always one to consider. And then every force, and this is where sometimes people get confused. Each force has a different entry routes, and they can change it as and when. So there's kind of four key ones really in Hampshire at the moment. And other forces. So you've got the police constable degree apprenticeship. So for most forces, that's to join as a police officer, but you can still transfer to become a detective. 3-year program, you get a degree at the end of it in professional policing, and you're accredited as a police officer. You've got the degree holder entry program, where for those of you that have already got a degree, you can apply 2-year program and you get an academic certificate at the end of it, and you're a police officer. There are detective routes for that as well. And the third one, and this is where Hampshire kind of offer two different versions, but it's the same in essence, is the Police Constable Entry Programme. So this is a non-academic accredited course that at the end of the 2 years, you can become a police officer at the end of it. Now, for Hampshire's version, we have a degree holder version and a non-degree holder version, and you get some slightly more leadership support around that. But every force calls it something different. So although it's like nationally called PSEP, Police Constable Entry Programme, in Hampshire we call it Policing Plus.
Okay. And then, so it does get quite complicated, doesn't it? So it's really looking at kind of what are each force is offering, what's it called, what's the eligibility?
Oh, absolutely. And loads of people loads of people will ask me, well, what's the best route? The honest answer is, at the end of that program, you're going to become an accredited officer or an accredited detective. So, and it's not like in policing, we look at the candidate and go, oh, you joined through that route. We're not going to give you that job because of this. So one of the best bits about having all these entry routes, as a candidate, I can go, well, what suits me right now? What meets my goals for my career? And you can choose that one. You've got that flexibility. So yes, I'm going to talk about in a minute the Hampshire version that we're offering, but that doesn't mean it's the right version for everyone. And I'd probably actually encourage some people that maybe actually the police officer route's better for you. Get that kind of bug out your system, like I had to, for example, and then think about becoming a detective later on. Don't feel the pressure to be railroaded into one route, because there are so many available to you across all the forces as well.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the Hampshire Detective Scheme then. So this is quite a new scheme, is that right?
Yeah, so it's launched this year. So the new Hampshire programme, it is called the Direct Entry Detective Constable Route, DEDC. It's essentially a PSEP programme. So within 2 years, we plan for people to become a detective. Now, before we introduced this, we had an always-on detective recruitment programme. So you could apply at any point during the year and become a detective. Now, we really want to make sure that we can focus and support our candidates all the way through. So instead of it being always on, we're going to open it once a year for people to start after they've graduated. So, for example, this year, we've opened it up now in March time for people to start November to January time. And that's to allow them to go through the recruitment processes and make sure all the vettings and all that stuff sorted so we can get a really firm date for them to start. But also it means they can plan a bit ahead. Because I know when I graduated, as an example, you're released into the world, and I didn't have my career sorted. So hopefully for those people that want to plan ahead a little bit, it just provides them with a little bit of stability. You're definitely not going to have the job from the second you graduate, because people's graduation dates are different. So we've tried to take that into account. But also, more importantly, some people have started and applied for policing and haven't been able to attend their graduation ceremony, because when you become an officer, we can't always guarantee leave dates. And I think that's a real shame. If you've worked for your degree for 3 or 4 years, you should probably want to go to your graduation. If you don't, some of your parents most definitely will want to go to it and make you go to it. So we've made sure we've kind of timed it for as many of them as possible to be done before we start, because we want you to have that moment as well.
And this is open for degree holders, so final year of university, or I guess if they've already graduated, does it matter how long ago you graduated?
No, it doesn't matter whatsoever. So we've had some people that are still studying now, It says on the application form, have you got a degree? You just have to say yes, but graduating this year. And we've had some people that have had degrees and have done completely different jobs for 5, 6, 10 years. That's the best bit. And we need that diversity of applicants as well. So it's not purely for those people that are just about to leave university.
Okay, cool. So in terms of having a degree is one aspect of the job, but I'm guessing you are also looking at other selection criteria. So what sort of person are you looking for?
So this is an interesting one because our application processes use something that's created by the College of Policing called the Competencies and Values Framework. It's essentially our mark scheme. So anyone who's looking to apply to join the police, whether it's police officer, detective, even volunteer roles, have a really good look at the CVFs on the College of Policing website. There's 6 competencies, 3 values. If you look through them and come up with a load of examples, you'll put yourself in a great position for the process. And there's loads of advice online, so I'm not going to repeat that stuff. But get to grips with that, and you'll put yourself in a great position. Now, the realities for a detective is you're joining a scheme where we want you to become a detective within the same period that some people become a police officer. So there's going to be some additional demands on you. So we kind of look for people that we think you can make a detective within this 2-year program. Now, that's not to say that people that don't make this program won't make great detectives. It might just be that they need a bit more time. And actually, if you apply for the Hampshire version, we've intentionally baked in the police officer assessments as well. So you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. We go, actually, look, you've not made the 30 that we're going to recruit for this window, but we think you'll make a great officer and detective in the future, that option's still available to you. So we've tried to be quite smart with our design. But in terms of like generic skills that we'd kind of expect from a detective, first one's critical thinking. You'll be really surprised to hear people lie to the police. And actually, some people that you interview are creative with the truth. But just being able to look at investigation and go, actually, this evidentially is what I've got. This is what I haven't got. This is potentially what a suspect or a victim or witness has told me. How can I prove or disprove that? And sometimes you have to look at it really cold and dispassionately for offences that aren't very nice, but that's your job as a detective. The other thing we're kind of thinking is decision-making. Really common skill. Now, everyone can go to Nando's and kind of go, I want plainish or extra spicy. But actually, as a detective, you might be going to scenes. And as I said earlier, a response officer might go, well, what do you want? Now, it's not just a case of making that decision. It's then being able to record it and justify it. I might get called to court 18 months, 2 years, 3 years down the line to go, well, why did you make that decision? Why did you make that bit of advice? So it's not just being able to make the decision. It's being able to record it so people can understand the position that you're in several years down the line. Because the reality is policing and crime happens massively fast. When you go to a scene, sometimes it's absolute chaos. So you're going to have to make decisions where you haven't got all the information. That's absolutely fine. We'll support you. But might be a point in the future where you need to explain to people, well, this was the position I was in, this is the information I had, and this is why I made that decision. It might prove out not to be the perfect decision, but when in life is decision-making perfect? And the kind of final 2 skills, report writing and presentation skills. Now, my longest investigation has lasted 5, 6 years. That is a long time. Yeah. And when we send it to the Crown Prosecution Service, who do a fantastic job of reviewing our investigations, the reality is they're not going to want to read 5, 6 years worth of paperwork. I don't want to read it, and I've written it. So when we're going to them for advice, actually a real skill is being able to distill the really important bits and go, well, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. Over to you, what do you think, and getting that advice. And there's a real art to that. So that's what we're definitely looking for in our detective constables. And also presentation skills. Now, I'm not talking about standing in front of a class and being able to deliver a PowerPoint, although that is great practice. But at some point as a detective, or even as a police officer, but definitely as a detective, I expect you to go to a Crown Court. Now, at some point, you're going to have to give your evidence to barristers, a judge, 12 members of the jury who have no idea about the criminal justice system or how the legal system works. But even if it's your first time in court, they'll look at you and expect you to be the expert in it. So just having a bit of confidence and being able to talk to people is a massive thing. And even if on a police officer route, although I'm saying this as a detective, presentation skills, you're going to turn up to these like public order incidents. People are going to be angry and upset, and you might be the only officer that comes out of the police car. Being able to like display that kind of skill, that control, is all about sometimes faking it until you make it, and having that, look, I'm in charge now, this is what's going to happen, you're going to go over there, you're going to go over there. And that requires presentation skills. Not in the kind of traditional way that everyone thinks, but it's an essential quality as an officer. And I'm not saying that everyone's going to have those skills straight away. I knew I was really quiet and timid when I first turned up, but you develop it, and we'll support you from your early stages of your career to get there.
Brilliant. So obviously, as they go through the recruitment process, which I'll ask you a little bit about kind of the stages of that as well, I'm sure they're going to be like questions. You said, use examples from real life experiences. So what sort of experiences could students get that could be really helpful when they're going through this process to demonstrate those skills?
Yeah. Now, I'm really keen to kind of push at this point. We do not expect you to be part-time Batman before you join as like an officer. It would be great if you did, but let's be fair, it's realistically not going to happen. So your university work or your college work will show you some great examples. One of them, for example, is being emotionally aware. Now, it doesn't have to be anything fantastic, but you could have had a friend who's been struggling through university. You've had to support them and get an outcome. Or I've had some excellent interview examples where people have done their critical analysis on their dissertation, as an example. You've had to really flesh it out to make sure it hits the points of the CVF, but you can do it. So we don't expect loads of stuff. What I would say is life experience is great. So if you've got a part-time job where you've worked with members of the public, that works really, really well. Some volunteering experiences also works really, really well. Ultimately, policing is a people-based business. You're going to talk to members of the public. Yes, there's some paperwork and some not very exciting stuff, but ultimately you've got to support members of the public, whether they're victims, witnesses, or suspects. So being able to talk to people is really important. So those are the life experiences that I'd say to people to go out and get. And naturally, your evidence will attract itself. Don't go out hunting for it. The best one is always those ones where you've just exposed yourself to a range of stuff.
Yeah. So I guess a range of different people within the community. So it could be like helping with different sectors of the community or people who are in need, I suppose, stuff like that.
Yeah, so before I joined, as an example, I volunteered for the British Red Cross doing first aid at events. And then I also kind of moved over to helping train some people first aid. So I did that to kind of go out. So that's a great example. I know there's St John's Ambulance and all sorts. But we've also had some great applicants that have done retail before. Because actually at some point you're going to be dealing with some angry customers because you can't keep everyone happy. But that helps develop that skill as well. So they're all options for you. You don't necessarily have to go, right, I've got to volunteer for the police. I've got to volunteer for victim support. Please do, because we love our volunteers and they help support us. But you don't necessarily have to be policing to kind of get a job in the police.
I've heard, I think a police officer told me before that even like bar work can be quite good because you're seeing a real cross section of the community there and dealing with potentially difficult customers and, intoxication and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also sometimes the subtlety in bar work is quite good because actually you're not going to tell some people that you need to get out. But if you can say, maybe you've had enough, or do you want a soft drink or something like that? It's all those kind of communication skills that as an officer, clearly you're not going to be serving pints, but it's those skills that you will use anyway.
Brilliant. So building those skills in some way. Did you say you were a special constable at one point as well?
Yeah, I was a special, yeah.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was a special constable whilst I was at university, and I did that. I applied for that in my first year of university because, to be honest, when I joined, I was on a criminology course, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. But the idea of kind of going out, seeing what policing about, essentially it was really good work experience for me. But I got to go out on the response teams. I was mostly based with a neighbourhoods team. So those kind of nights where I didn't want to spend so much money, I went out and volunteered, and that actually worked really well. And I got that kind of insight that other people didn't get. Transpired when I joined actually put me in a great position because there's a posting panel and they kind of went, oh, we know James, although my application had already been marked and I'd already got in, so it didn't affect that element, but they kind of went, oh, actually we would really like James on our team. And from what I've been told, obviously I wasn't there was a kind of a discussion about where to post me because I had a good reputation. Now, you don't need that because you'll get through the process anyway, but that's quite nice to hear. And actually, I got to know whether I wanted the job before I actually did the job. It's a bit gutting that some people get paid to do it and I didn't, but I could also pick my duties. So I got the benefit I could do Friday, Saturday nights, which I really enjoyed, that kind of element. I got to help police the Olympic torch relay.
Oh, wow.
So I was one of the police officers along the route. So you, as a special constable, the public don't know any different for a start, but you still get experience. You still get those great experiences as well. I'd strongly recommend it to anyone. It's one of the best policing experiences I've had.
Yeah, it sounds like a really, really useful thing to be doing, for both getting an understanding of the role, but also, amazing experience to then talk about when you're applying. So
Yeah, definitely. And it got rid of a load of my first. So when you first put that uniform on, I'm not going to lie, you feel like a bit of a fake. So I didn't have that on my first day of like joining as a full-time officer. I had already done my first arrest, like searching people. So it actually just took the pressure off me as well. So that was really nice as well.
So can we talk a little bit more about the selection process for the obviously we won't speak about all the different schemes, but for the Hampshire scheme. So do
Yeah.
they apply online first? Like, what is the process for that?
Yep. So just have a search. Hampshire police jobs will come up, and then you put an online application form for the detective constable route. At the moment, there's 2 marked application questions on there, but the majority of the form is actually just to check that you're eligible to join as an officer. So, do you have a full manual driving license? Have you resided in the UK for 3 years? All that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we will filter applicants at that point, because it might be that you're not eligible this year, but you might be eligible next year.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have a filter at that stage. If you pass that, happy days. You then go through to the College of Policing assessments. Now they do 2 online assessment that any officer, regardless of which way you want to go, have to do. So one of them involves like verbal reasoning and those kind of tests, and the second one involves much more of those CVF based examples. Whatever route, whatever force you have to go to, you'll be doing those assessments. The final kind of 2 stages for Hampshire, there's an in-house assessment centre in Hampshire, so we'll do an interview, because in force we actually want to see you and make sure that you can talk to us. There's a group discussion and a presentation exercise, and you have to do the bleep test. Now everyone panics about the bleep test. I certainly do every year because I have to do it yearly. It's 5.4, and you can even download an audio file on the College of Policing website, so that's free and available to you. Once you pass that, it's pre-employment checks. So it's referencing, vetting, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll look to get you started. So we were saying the process could take 6 to 9 months. We're looking more towards the 6-month mark, because in Hampshire, we've put a lot of an investment in getting that as smooth as possible. But it's very personal from candidate to candidate, especially around the vetting stages. That's generally where there might be a hold-up, if there is ever going to be one. So it's a long process. It's not a job that you can apply on a Friday night and start on Monday, but there's a reason why we want high-quality people, and we want to make sure the individuals involved in policing should be the best of the best. We've seen some horrendous news articles over the last couple of years. I don't want to open that can of worms in terms of that debate, but actually it's really pushed why we need to make sure that our new officers and all of our officers serving with us are to a high standard.
That's really important, isn't it? And you referred to the competencies at the beginning. Are they called competencies?
It's the competencies and values framework.
Yeah. So they use those to assess the candidate throughout the whole selection, recruitment process. Is that what? So it's really worth. Looking at that.
Definitely have a look at that. All of our assessment marked questions on the application form are marked against the CVF. The College of Policing will assess against the CVF. It literally makes the policing world go round when it comes to job applications. So I can't say enough how important it is. And also, it should be something that you look through. And if you're looking through that and go, actually, yes, that's me. It shows that you're probably right for us as an organisation, whether that's Hampshire, Surrey, Sussex, Dorset, whoever it may be. That is really important. And you will know that you fit in. When you have a look at it, you load up the College of Policing website, you'll have a look at it, and there's kind of 2 paragraphs when you click on each competency. One that explains what it is in this context, and the second one that explains why it's important for policing. If you can look through and kind of go, well, actually, in policing, it might say that it means being able to listen to people and understand the different perspectives. Well, if you're looking at that and going, I've got an example where I spoke to someone, we didn't necessarily get on at first, but I took some time, understood their perspective, and we kind of hit a middle ground. That's a great example. Build on that. Like I said, there's loads of advice online in relation to it, so I don't want to repeat it now, but get to grips with it and it'll make your application process so much easier.
Brilliant. And the group, you said there'll be a group activity. Are you kind of able to give any sort of indication, without giving too much away, of the type of group activity that people might come across?
So in Hampshire at the moment, it's a discussion. As you hit each stage, and I'm really wary that it can change from time to time, so you'll get instructions prior to each one to allow you to prepare. The honest answer is, for the group activity, it's not something you can really prepare for. It's a discussion. We'll provide you with a prompt card, And then within your group of 6 or so people, we expect you to kind of discuss the content that we've given you. My biggest tip for that is, one, make sure you talk. There are some people that get drowned out, and that's a real shame, but it's hard to mark you if we can't hear you talking. And the second one is make sure everyone has a go. And that just allows fairness. The good thing with the policing system, and I know the group discussion is a Hampshire kind of based activity, but in policing, there's kind of a set pass mark. So you're not competing against each other in the room. Yes, we've got a certain number of spaces for this degree detective program, but that doesn't mean that if you hit that score, we'll put everyone through to vetting, and it just might mean some people have a police officer route, or you give us a really hard discussion and we might have to run another pathway. That's absolutely fine. But it's not you're not against everyone in the room. If everyone passes, great, everyone passes. So please, we have some people that kind of don't want to speak to any of the other candidates because they're afraid that they're the competition. Don't be like that at all. Relax, enjoy it. I know it's an assessment centre and no one loves an assessment centre, but hopefully you'll pass.
And I guess if you're showing you can get on with people, then that's better, isn't it? You want that communication skills. You want to see that rapport
and that's
building.
why in Hampshire we have that group discussion, because we want to be able to see people, to be able to talk to people they've potentially never met before. Because that's what you're going to do. At first, you're going to turn up on a response car. You're going to turn up to a scene and talk to an absolute stranger about something that's potentially really bad that's just happened. Or they might have just lost their child and they're absolutely bawling their eyes out. But you've somehow got to build that rapport and be able to talk to people. So, yeah, it's really scary. And it's a bit forced. Let's be fair, it's an assessment centre. But that's why we assess those skills, because we need those officers to have those skills.
Brilliant. And then after the assessment centre, you have the interview, do you?
Yeah, so it's all built into one day. So we'll invite you down for half a day. At the moment, it's at our training headquarters in Hamble, which is near Southampton. But again, it can vary depending on where our state is. But we'll invite you for like a half day, and you basically have a station. So one group of people will do the bleep test, one group of people will do the group discussion, another one will do their presentation and interviews, and you just rotate round. For those of you who are worried about the bleep test, because it makes everyone all hot and bothered, we make sure there's a bit of a break afterwards as well, because no one wants to go straight from just catching their breath to having to do an interview. That's not fun for anyone. Like I said, I don't like the bleep test as it is. So.
Brilliant. That's really, really useful. Okay. So any final pieces of advice that you would give anyone considering this route? Yeah.
So what I would say is policing is really, really diverse. That's one of the best benefits about it. But there's loads of guides online where people say, oh, you should do this. You've got to do this. Do what's right for you. There are some people out there that go, look, I really want to become a detective, but I don't want to be a police officer first, because the idea of like the Friday, Saturday nights and people shouting and screaming at me puts me off. Now, as part of the fast track program, there is a period on those response teams just because you've got to be exposed to it, but it's much, much reduced. So don't feel like you have to pick a certain route because you want to. And then my kind of other bit of advice is just enjoy it. Yes, the assessment centres are a bit stressful. The application process takes a long time. But when you become an officer, you get a real insight into the criminal justice system, into people's lives that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise see. It's a really privileged position. It can be a bit stressful, but actually you'll make some great friends. I've met some friends that I'll have for life. You'll have some memories that you'll never be able to replace, some good and bad, and you get to make a real difference to people's lives. So even if you don't do this for the whole 15, 30 years that your career may want to be, in policing, you'll make a difference, even if you're just with us for a couple of years. So just make the most of it. And I don't think people don't recognise how privileged they are to have this role. There's a reason why there's TV shows made about it. There's a reason why people want to watch Sherlock Holmes and all that kind of stuff. It is really fascinating. So make the most of it. And that's why we've got assessment processes, because so many people want to get involved, and we can't have everyone.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting hearing all about the scheme, but also kind of an overview of becoming a detective and police officer as well. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening today. Please remember to subscribe and follow so you can keep up to date with all new episodes.